Hello?
Have any of our applicants right now?
The folks from Bowman since it's just deliberations, they decided they're just going to watch on YouTube. They're not going to actually zoom in, but they are watching.
Before we get started, for this one, do we need to split it into two? Because I don't want to deny, if they want to get their signage up, I don't want to.
Well, it looks like we got the property owner walking up the hall now. Let me see. Mike, is Mr. Hamilton coming?
Do we have the full-
No, I don't have the whole package.
Is your tenant coming? Okay. I'm sure you are, yeah. All right.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
It blew up my plan. I was gonna tie my shoes in the elevator, so I didn't have like my shoes moved down.
Steve, do we have the motion sheets and the rest of the packets or not? Because I didn't print anything out come down
See, I don't know, these guys have done a beautiful build out in space, by the way. It's really nice.
I'm not, I try to be organized, but I don't get.
I got it all. Michael, I got it all. How's it going? Good to see you. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
All right. And our agenda, the first thing is the demolition. Okay.
No, no.
For those people watching on YouTube or joining via Zoom, just be aware we are recording this meeting, and it will be available after a while on YouTube at the city's page on that.
Hi, everyone on YouTube. Hope you're having a great day.
Yeah, it would be. That would be to approve. That would be- No, that's.
Staff ready when you are.
Go for it. You don't have any consent agenda.
Do you have an agenda sheet? We don't have any packets whatsoever, other than the
They're laying
additional
over here.
information you have.
Michael. it's on the
Oh, I
corner
didn't even see
table.
you coming up. I'm sorry. I walked right by. I'm so out. Yes. Yes.
I got one.
Now we're getting somewhere. All right. All right, I think we're ready to get started here. right, my name is Michael Gear, Chair. I call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic District Commission to order this 8th day of July 2021. There is a quorum present. The roster of the staff to the commission, of the commission members, and the technical posts that they fill in accordance with the requirements of the Hagerstown zoning ordinance are on file with the city of Hagerstown, are available on request of any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. All decisions rendered are based on the Secretary of the Interior standard and guidelines as adopted by the city of Hagerstown. Each decision is not intended to be precedent setting. If you have any cell phones or other electronic devices, please make sure they have been silenced. Please note all of our meetings are recorded and are broadcast live on YouTube. Today we have just design reviews. When we get to those particular cases, those applicants, we'll ask them to state their name and address for the record. There will be a brief synopsis of your application from the staff consultant, and after that, the floor will then be turned over to the applicant for any further elaboration. After that, the floor will then be open for discussion by the commission members prior to rendering a decision on that application. At this time, we have approval of the minutes for June 24th, 2021. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. They were emailed out to us earlier this week. We'll entertain a motion for adoption, corrections, or revisions. Please so note. We have a motion.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned and second. At this time, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes for June 24th, 2021, please signify by saying aye.
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 Leslie, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Thank you.
Barely.
Aye.
All
That was
right.
an aye.
Motion carries. All right, next up, we have design review cases. We have HDC 2021-14 for 1416 East Antietam Street for demolition of the building that was tabled on June 24th.
Mr. Chairman, just FYI for everybody who's participating, the applicants, in this case Bowman Development, the representatives told me that they are going to be watching the proceedings on YouTube, but they did not join by Zoom. Since it's a deliberations, they really can't participate anyway. So you're not going to see them up on the Zoom screen, but they are watching, presumably. And basically, you closed the acceptance of additional materials at your last meeting. At this meeting today, all you're doing at this point is deliberating and making your decision in the case.
All right, commission members, obviously we did a quick straw poll with the last meeting. I don't know if anybody has weighed the information, had any different viewpoints at this point, so we'll entertain any additional comments that you have, or we'll entertain a motion for one direction or the other. Anybody have any additional comments as far as for deliberation?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I know we've talked a lot with the applicants about multiple options that would try to save the building, and it doesn't appear that any are feasible. And as I indicated last time, I'm very reluctant to approve demolishing a building, especially one I find attractive, and it's been around the city for over 100 years, but I'm kind of at an impasse about what the options are. I see it almost as a binary option at this point. We ask the applicant to secure it and the building continues to erode, or we approve the application. And I think I indicated in the last meeting that I would reluctantly have to move towards demolishing it, in light of the fact also it's kind of in and around a number of commercial buildings. It's not on a streetscape where there's a lot of housing that are like it. And so, again, this is deliberation. I just find myself in a position where I don't know. Really, I think we have two unfortunate options.
Understood. Anybody else? Any further comments?
Excuse me, I can't quite hear the speaker. They might be too far from the microphone, so it's garbled.
Leslie, we can barely hear you.
I couldn't hear the last speaker. I don't even know who it was. They were garbled, but I can hear Mike Gear fine.
Can you speak up more?
Everybody's good.
Can you hear me?
I'm standing right near the computer and I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find a volume on this.
I have. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Right now, Leslie.
My comments will be brief, but I couldn't hear whoever just spoke what they said. If they could talk into their mic, I think I could hear them.
I guess that was me, Leslie. This
Yeah.
is Doug. To just kind of, as a synopsis, I said that I was left with, I thought, two unfortunate options. One is to ask the applicant to fence the property and to leave it as it is, because obviously, as you know, we've all tried to find alternate solutions to not demolishing the building. And then we're obviously left with a second option. So my position has been, I don't like either option. But out of those two options, I would unfortunately think that the building, in so much as it's basically in a box around commercial buildings and not part of a streetscape of housing, that I would begrudgingly support demolishing it. But again, I want to emphasize, it's not that I want to. I just don't see that we have any other options right now other than asking the applicant to fence it.
Okay. Thank you. If I may, I think that it is a conundrum for us to have to address this, but I thought of these other points that were brought up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear now.
Okay. The one point in 66 West Washington, some properties on West Antietam that can, for various causes and calls, but continue to be vacant properties. Some are fenced, some are grass, some are parking lots, some are vacant lots being used for equipment storage, and still no plan. And this applicant has said that there is no plan other than they do not want the building. It seems as if their recent purchase was indicative that they were always intending to have the building taken down. That's my take on it. And there is another residential building next door to it, so I don't completely agree with the argument about a streetscape and other rationale about the type of building that it is because of its proximity to other similar structures. But I do know that we're not, without a plan beyond a grassy front, or possibly an economic approach for a public venture, I have not seen any information that would compel me to change my opinion if the property could be rehabbed. And I've looked.
comment.
Personally, I think that we're in a situation that none of us anticipated or signed on to be involved in. It's one thing to approve new deck railing, one thing to approve an addition to a house. But we're in a situation where we are directly involved with the historic building in the historic area, downtown Hagerstown. It's probably a little more than we're bit off, a little more to be concerned about than we probably get into. It's a very, very difficult decision.
On that, feedback, which way you might be leaning.
I'd rather not to be voted.
Okay.
Chris, did you have anything to add?
I didn't really have much things to add that other people haven't said in past meetings. Other than that, it sure seems like Bowman's real determined to either demolish the building or just let it fall into disrepair. So I don't know what we can do about that, but yep.
You know, it's agreed that the applicant hasn't proffered any type of plan for what the building or what the property could become part of. You know, our guidelines in the last rendition, you know, based on the economic viability, but there was stuff in it, you know, laid out as to a plan of action to move things forward. That certainly is not here, and at least not developed at this time. And that makes it more difficult. You know, what we had put in place in our guidelines in the last rendition was to try to prevent just demolition of historic properties without a plan of what's going back in place, and some assurances that that plan could be accomplished over the time. You know, we had one case many years ago that developer was coming in and he wanted to tear a building down, but again, didn't have any concrete plans as to what he was planning to do. Did not move forward. Eventually, I don't know that particular property, but
Ultimately, it was demolished.
the building was eventually demolished and something was constructed in its place.
It's the old, what you're referring to are actually, some of the buildings, we back up. Some of the buildings were, and some of the buildings still remain and were rehabbed. Because I think it was basically where Potomac Walk is today, was the area. We were talking about taking down the building that the Bulls and Bears is in now, plus the building
No, that was
taken down.
no, that was it was before that particular case.
Before that,
It was before that particular case. I mean, this is going back a ways.
okay.
I thought it was like a building on a corner, but I can't recall what the actual address was.
They,
Understand that.
they provided a concept plan, which they said that they would initiate with the demolition. Basically, they're going to grass the area. There's going to be able to put a couple of trees in there and an ornamental metal fence along the street.
So they did offer some, you know, as a temporary use until something down the road, whatever down the road could be at that point. So, you know, at this point, you know, I don't know that anybody's going to change direction one way or the other in order to move us out of this deadlock, so to speak. You know, somebody's got to proffer a motion, you know, to act on one way or the other. That being said, that's what If the application is denied, basically it's on hold for a year. The applicant cannot come back in with that same application just to demolish the building without some substantial change to that application within a year of time.
Which could include a plan for redevelopment. Yeah, they can't come in with the same application for 12 months. But it doesn't take a whole lot to change an application either. If they came in, if they found out that Meinl Schmidt is looking to move forward in shorter term than they thought, and they're like, okay, let's pull the trigger and do this area back here, that's change enough to re-warrant re-review by the board.
So definitive plans beyond this proposal would allow them to come back.
There's a lot of things that could allow them to come back in. The idea is if there new information available, they could change the decision within that 12 months. Another thing could be maybe if they really wanted down that bad, if they did more in-depth financial analysis and came in with more documentation to prove it's not financially viable. That's more information or different information that could allow them to come back. But that provision in the ordinance says that you can't come back for a year. Pretty narrow definition. Basically, they just can't come back into the same type that they have here and try again. You can't do that. But they got more information, different information, proposal, whatever. They could reapply. Staff would ask, and I'm weighing my words carefully because I don't want to influence you one way or the other. But one of the primary things that you're supposed to look at in these things is whether or not rehabilitation of the building is financially viable, because that's pretty much the standard that you use for all of these demolitions. So I haven't heard a whole lot of conversation about the details of the financials provided and whether you thought they were sufficient or insufficient. So
Well, I did look at them, and what I was struck by was how low they were. As I appreciated, it was like $300,000 to remedy the fire damage. Yet they were only estimating, I want to say less than $100,000 to rehab the entire building. I'm sure they know what they're doing, but it just seems awful low.
Like,
Based on what little information I have.
I would think that what the insurance company was saying was until you got done rehabbing just to take care of the fire damage, you would probably be addressing most of the work within the building. So yes, there was some additional work, but it probably wasn't
The
a large
building I
number.
saw, to make it truly livable, required a heck of a lot more work than what I thought they had proposed.
Right. I
But
know,
again, they know their business better than I do.
and the comment that Ms. Allen had brought up, the cost of raising your dollars or financing or whatever it was, there was a line item that at that point the applicant could not really determine how they arrived at that particular number. I think Leslie was questioning, that. Keep in mind, again, our guidelines say, rehabilitation just has to be profitable. So what's anybody's definition of profitability? If you can show that it makes $1 or $1 on the property on that rehab, is that considered profitable? Some people would say yes. Most of us, if we're trying to get some type of return for all the hard work and effort that you put into the building, I think you would probably want something a little bit more than that, than $1 at that particular time. What's is it, 500,000 or 600,000? Probably not. But so that definition of what profitability is, is pretty wide open. I don't know that the numbers presented really showed that it was or wasn't profitable at that point. It looked like there was some funding or monies there, but again, it wasn't really laid out understandable whether, in 10 years it would return a profit that, the loans would have been paid off and it'd be into money, or if they would immediately sell after renovation, if they would be able to recoup any of their cost at that point. So, that really was not, or what I didn't see it in the numbers. Maybe I just didn't understand what the numbers were trying to tell us at that point. maybe somebody else has a better understanding of those previous numbers.
It's unfortunate. I mean, I know they were here last time. It's unfortunate they're not here.
We've had to reopen the case. As of right now, the case is, testimony period is closed. You're strictly deliberating.
If I remember correctly, and Leslie can correct me if I'm wrong, she said at the last meeting that she was not comfortable with the dollars provided in the information from Bowman Development to us. And that we should probably go out and try to solicit another cost estimate from the private sector. Leslie, is that correct?
The topic was brought up, but my implication was that the detail of the numbering is I don't want to say magic because there's rationale behind it, but like anything else, numbers are moving figures. The economy moves, the community is changing, our portfolios vary, and when we're looking at one parcel, one piece of property with a house on it here, the gentlemen were, and because this is their interest, is they were showing this as a tangent to their portfolio. And I wanted to look at this parcel independently, regardless of who owns it, as if there was a blinder on. There were the numbers were for this property, and what is the detail behind those numbers, because there's a lot of subjectivity in that. When the gentleman said, we don't know, that's true, it's a crystal ball. Nobody knows what the economy is or is not going to do, no matter how many steps we take in a certain direction. And that's the difficulty. Our board is here to protect these limited resources, and once they're gone, they're gone. That's why my perspective was I objected to the numbers in their presentation. They could be fine if they're in more detail, but rather that without plan beyond a vacant lot, there's no going backwards. Now there's a vacant lot, taxed as a vacant lot, no requirement to have a non-vacant structure fee, no water meter that, adds to the community's, subsidizing of all the costs in the city, just a lot at a reduced tax rate, and that resource is gone. And that's what I think we have to focus on. And the issue of the financials, I think, is another conversation, not just because of this applicant, but because there could be some better improvement. There could be improvement to that aspect of these kinds of determinations, which I don't think we can resolve ourselves here. That's bigger. But the resource will be gone. The applicant should be an invisible person, and we should be evaluating strictly on the parcel. I think that's what our guidelines imply to us.
Staff would point out on the issue of the second opinion thing. I think I brought that up as a policy matter, not specifically related to this application. You have to deal with the regulations and processes you have in place now. I believe, if I remember correctly, at the last meeting, I pointed out a lot of jurisdictions have a process where if you're coming in and you're making this argument for a demolition, that the HDC has an independent contractor that they'll go to. There'll be, obviously, they're not going to do it for free. There's going to be a fee. Basically, they collect the fee from the applicant, pass it through to the contractor to do an independent assessment. That way, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for here? For lack of better words, obviously, if you're going to put together a package most conducive to what their ends. And other HDCs do that, where you end up getting a third party to provide that financial evaluation. And at staff level, we're actually going to look at the possibility of seeing if we could possibly get something like that written into our ordinance. But we don't have that on the plate now.
All right. So, obviously, all good discussion, but we still we got to move one way or the other. We sit here and talk all we want, but,
You're going to need to make a motion or else it's officially approved. The applicant is not participating in this meeting. They're not here to be able to agree to any additional extensions. So if you walk out of here without a motion, the 45-day period lapses and it will be approved by default. So if you're going to want to weigh in on it, you're going to want to weigh in one way or the other today. Because I don't know if there's a way we can get a hold of the applicant to see if they're willing to extend. And frankly, what is extending at this point
well, yeah,
accomplish?
other than a lot of additional information, which I don't think is available at this particular point in time. So, that said, we need, like I said, we need some type of motion made one way or the other to get an
I'd
action.
like to make a point of order. I'd like to make a point of order.
Go ahead.
All right.
If the conundrum, as was pointed out in the last meeting, is an interpretation of our rules of order that if we make a vote one way and it fails, does that make it go the other way, or would another vote be required for the way that it reads? It was explained to us pretty thoroughly at the last meeting, and that is also part of the dilemma.
I don't know the answer to that. to be
Recall.
honest with you.
Right. So,
Use the little what we're talking
well,
about.
what I think
Mike
Leslie,
touched on it.
I think what Leslie is getting at is, at this point, if there was a motion made to approve the demolition and it failed 3-2, where does that leave us? Does that, okay, so the motion, so the application approval is denied, does that by default deny the application, or do we have to do there has to be another motion to deny the application and get it to pass, or vice versa, if there
Or
was.
what happens if neither type of motion passes, which is a
Right,
possibility.
it's always a
depending on how
possibility.
people vote. I think at that point, we walk out of this meeting not knowing the answer to that. I would be making a phone call to the attorney tomorrow morning for their legal guidance on what is the result of that vote. I don't
Well,
have that answer.
Well, at this point, it would be a tie vote, and basically there was no action, and by default, then the case would be approved by, extension of time.
That may be what the city attorney will tell us. I just hesitate to speak on their behalf. I don't know.
But, one way or the other, I guess till we have a vote,
I have-
where it goes.
Mr. Garrett, I have never recalled being in a meeting using these rules of order where it was understood that a stand on a motion allowed for the reverse to happen if it was a negative, which is what we're talking about. I've never seen that. I've seen only where if it was denied, another motion could be made in the reverse that would ask the same question in the opposite way. But I've never had that implication, because that would mute every decision we've ever voted on that said, yes, let's say we didn't agree to a fence, and suddenly because we didn't agree, it was reversed on the same premise. Because we're talking about the whole property here.
I tend to
So
agree
I
with
think
Leslie.
Right.
I don't think anything is ever approved by a
Deny it.
failure of a motion.
Right. And I
The
think,
question is if there's no successful motion and we walk out of here without one, what is the result?
Right.
And I think I know what the answer to that is, but again, I would defer to.
Okay, I think that needs just to be very clear so that we are not operating under the wrong premise.
Presumably you have five voting members here.
Right.
And of the 5 of you, you all are going to come down on this issue on one side or the other. So if the initial motion, one way or the other, fails, presumably an opposite motion that follows it, if everybody is consistent to their first vote, the second motion, whichever way it is, will most likely succeed.
so
Okay.
we got to have folks willing to make those motions irregardless of what that outcome is. So,
I can make a motion.
all right, we can proceed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have inspected the project plans and the property in question, and if demolished in accordance with these plans, the project is not compatible with the character of the district for the reasons that the general form and proportion are generally not in harmony with the architectural design guidelines for the commercial historic district and the character of the adjoining properties. Therefore, I move that the HDC not issue a certificate of appropriateness to the applicant for case number HDC 2021-14.
Second,
All right, discussion. So we're saying by not issuing a certificate of appropriateness, then you're saying that the application would be denied.
correct.
Yes.
Yes, the motion for denial.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was clear because. All right. Anybody else have any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to deny
Would
the
you call a
application?
roll call, please? Point of order. Would you call a roll call on that, please?
All right, we can do that.
Do we need to do it or you want to do?
We'll do a roll call
Oh,
for the vote. So at this time, we have a motion and a second to deny the application. Those voting in favor, please signify so. Carol? All right. Mr. Powell?
aye.
All right. Ms. Allen?
I agree with the motion as read.
All right. And Mr. George?
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman.
And as chair, a nay. At this time, that motion passes on a 3-2 vote.
Okay. All right. And just so we're clear, if different circumstances, different materials, different information that may affect the decision. Yeah, could be any number of potential things. They could reapply, but they can't reapply for 12 months. Or essentially everything is just in this packet.
I would certainly appreciate applicants' cooperation with this. Hopefully, if they do, and we certainly encourage them to reapply, we can get much more in-depth information, financial background, as well as maybe some additional plans that could move the project forward. So I appreciate their time. At this point, we'll move on to the next case, HDC 2021-25 for 55 West Franklin Street, the Island Twist Juice Bar for a storefront improvement and facade grant and sign.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I did a revised staff report, which I emailed out to everyone, and provided copies to the members who are here in person and the applicant, updating some information associated with the signs that were involved. So I'm going to be reading a modified staff report into the record. Basically, the issues that were cited in the initial staff report have been resolved regarding the wall-mounted sign. And also, we had forgotten to put a description in there of a projecting sign in the initial report. We did add that, and it's fine with that as well. So this is HDC case 2021-25. The applicant is Andre Hamilton, trading as Island Twist Juice Bar, LLC. Property is located at 55 West Franklin Street in the downtown historic district. The building is a B resource. It contributes to the character of the district, but is not likely to qualify for National Register listing individually. Photograph of the property is shown on page 1 of your staff report. The applicant's business, the juice bar, is looking to go into the left-hand storefront in the photograph on the staff report. The design guidelines are pages 25 to 27 and 31 to 32 of the downtown guidelines. Description of work and plans. The applicant proposes to replace the existing front windows with new bronze framed 1/4-inch laminated clear safety glass for safety reasons. The applicant proposes to install a 26-inch by 120-inch, that's 21.66 square feet, flat-mounted sign in the sign panel above the storefront. An 8-square-foot projecting sign is also proposed. The applicant also proposes to replace the brick veneer around the storefront with a simulated stone veneer. Staff recommendation, staff recommends approval of the replacement of the storefront window and glass. They are not historic to the building, and the retention serves no historic preservation purpose, and the new material is being put in for safety purposes. Staff recommends approval of the signs. They do now currently comply with the design guidelines in all manner, and also with the zoning requirements or limitations on signs in the CCNU zoning district. Staff recommends that the request to install a stone veneer on the storefront be denied as inconsistent with the design guidelines. This mid-19th century mixed-use building has never had stone as a facade material, and adding that element would be inconsistent with the guidelines. Secretary Interior Standards number 2, 3, 9, and 10. And also, as part of this is a request for approval for the purposes of obtaining a facade grant from our Community and Economic Development.
I'm just here to say that I support the commercial juice bar moving in that these guys have done.
Mike, identify yourself for the record.
Mike Fitzgerald. I'm a local developer. This is a property that we own. We plan to make the upstairs really stepped up residential residents to help complement the project we're doing behind there. The juice bar, I'm very impressed with the build out they've done. They've done a very high-end build out, very impressive. With my 100% support what they're doing, we plan to start renovating the upstairs soon. And I support everything they want to do. I've reviewed everything. On another note, I have family in town that's leaving in 45 minutes. So I got to answer what I need to do and I got to go say goodbye. So.
All right, does our applicant have anything further to add? State your name and share the record, please.
Okay. Yes, my name is Andre Hamilton, and I'm the applicant for Island Juice Bar. And I have a few photos of the stonework that we were trying to get, yeah, I forget some. Thank you.
Even the floor here, super impressive. You guys got to check it out. It's not easy to impress me with renovations because I know high-end product, and these guys did a gorgeous building.
So as I appreciated, the application has.
Yeah, we have those
accommodated the dimension for the addition, but the applicant still wants to use the stone on the front, which I'll recommend.
Okay. Yeah, the material, they were just saying common materials and out of the guidelines. All right, so yeah, we have this photo, so I'll pass that to you guys can see those additional photographs. All right. All right, so you can have that. So the applicant is asking to remove the brick. Apparently, what he's saying is it is a simulated brick currently. It's probably some type of veneer that was put up over top of whatever substrates behind that, kind of a faux brick type product. So we have that information. However, I guess the streetscape that we're dealing with, the age of the building doesn't really lend itself to a stone veneer. I understand you're trying to tie the interior to the exterior, making that connection, and I can appreciate that. But that's probably the only stone building veneer on that block, which really isn't within.
Mr. Chairman, I think I can provide a little bit of explanation of part of the reason why Mr. Hamilton went in this direction, in addition to the interior finishes, is the application form that the Economic Development Office uses. They have copied certain pages of our design guidelines and packed them in as addendums essentially to their application for the grant. and they're a little out of context. I could understand why somebody would see this list and say, oh, stone is okay. But if you read through the design guidelines, stone is okay on a building of the architectural period where stone would have been appropriate for it, which this isn't. But that kind of information didn't make it to the Economic Development Office's package. I actually had a meeting with them this morning. Just to give you some additional background, this grant program has been in place for a number of years, but it's sat fallow for the last several due to budget issues. If you think about it, you haven't approved grant approvals for a while. Well, now they got money back in the thing. The staff that they have down there is all new since the money dried up and they got put back in, so it's new to them. I'm working with them. I even had a meeting with them this morning about making sure we have better information going out to applicants to help them understand the HDC process and the expectations for individual buildings better as they come into the process. So I can understand where Mr. Hamilton's coming from when the materials that were provided to him by the Economic Development Office. And we're going to make sure that now that we're back in the business of providing grants, and those grants have to be approved by this body, that we're going to make sure that they're getting the best information possible on the front end from here on out.
All right. Comments from the commission members?
Would it be possible for you, Mr. Bachmiller and Mr. Hamilton to get together and review some alternate facings for that building?
We could do that.
If Mr. Hamilton's willing to sit down, Mr. Bachmiller, maybe you all could review some other items that could possibly use in place of the stone. If there's something else out there that's compatible with the building, find it and so be it. And go with it.
So what happened, I'm willing to work with him on that, it's no problem. But, you know, I was following the guidelines for everything. He had
Yeah.
purchased stone. When he told me that, I was like, oh, and then he already went and bought the stone. So now we got the stone inside the store that we out front. So he said that to me. So I understand rules is rules, and you know, I will have to meet and explain if it can't be done, and we just have to take a loss with the money that we put on the stone. So, you know, like I said, I don't have no problem to sit down and talk, see how we can figure it out.
If you're inclined to move forward, given the circumstances, staff would recommend that you make a motion that's highly detailed to the unique circumstance of this being a non-historic storefront, and that you're basically putting in a modern storefront that happens to have a stone texture to it. That way, it's not used as any sort of argument or precedent in other properties about using it on other storefronts. I would stay away from the fact that Mr. Hamilton's already bought the stone, because we can't get into that, because people just buy the materials and then come here and say, oops, I bought the materials. And I'm not saying you did that, but this body has to deal with the the guidelines as they are. So I want to stay away from in a motion, the issue, the fact that the material has already been bought, if you're inclined to allow it to move forward and focus on some conversation about how the storefront itself is not historic to the building. So changing it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think that, you know, as far as the application, everything else, the signage, you know, changing out the windows, that kind of stuff, I don't think anybody has any issues
Yeah.
with at this point. It's just the,
Maybe what's underneath the like the air, the brick, and what's underneath it?
Yeah, it's like, the existing building, like the previous tenant that had that building, I guess they had, you know, rubber bricks, it's not even like real bricks. And it's falling apart, so, and my
Which-
landlord, this is the reason I bought it here. He's doing the whole building, it's not gonna be the face. So we're gonna do a facelift, not the stone, but we're trying to give that curb appearance like face now. And the next building that's inside is also like, and we're trying to bring another business as well, you know. And
So they're actually taking both storefronts in that building, but this is right behind University of Maryland, and there's a large problem with people being there, but shouldn't be right now. It's right where I'm doing the high-end luxury residential downtown. So for them to be right there with such a nice product, and this is a place where people sleep on the porches, they're everywhere. It's kind of hard. So I'm trying to get it under control in that whole area. So them being there is huge, but it's an area that needs so much love. This really brightens it up. And, I want to help them in any way I can. They've been really great to work with, very on point. They do what they say they're going to do, and they do a beautiful job.
No, I mean, yeah, the interior photos, I mean, it's wonderful what you've got going.
When you walk in there, it's a whole wow factor of what they did to the floor and everything. It's really neat.
Building was originally, when was the building originally constructed? Do you remember what that age of that building is?
I estimated roughly mid-19th century, 1850 to 1875, somewhere in there.
It's over 100. It's over 100 years old. Upstairs, we're going to be converting 2-bedroom units to really nice 1-bedroom units to help step up to our project, and we're hoping to attract the right folks through there. We're working together, me and other people in the area, to try to really clean that area up.
If you notice the photograph on the staff report, it's possible this building may have been built in 2 phases, a 3-story building, but if you notice the window configuration on the front facade is different. You have flat lintels, which is very typical of earlier 19th century construction. Then you have the arch tops on the 3rd floor. Not uncommon to add floors to buildings in the late 19th century. So the first 2 floors of this building, by my guesstimation, that's roughly Civil War building. 1850s, 60s, 70s, maybe into the possibly as late as the 1880s. And then the upper floors, the 3rd floor may have been added turn of the century, a little bit before maybe. If done in 2 phases, it's possible to build all in one, but the use of the flat lintels is very indicative of mid-19th century.
The staff photo looks different from the photo here. That the storefront has changed from the original photo to this. Because it looks like the side that this would be on, it had more of a sloping the whole way back.
It does angle back into the site, yeah.
Right. Well, but by this photo here, this portion is out by the street and then it angles back, where in the photo, the 2 main panes are angled back and then it gets to the door. Yeah, it's 2 different, I mean, the opposite side is brick, and which is kind of mirrored in the photo that we have here.
I'm not sure if that's an optical illusion or what. I see what you're saying.
Or did that photo get spun around?
I think this photo got flipped.
I think the photo got reversed. Yes, sir.
Both sides look good. Both of them side, but 55.
And what's that?
That plane, that thing broke. Other side,
This photo is backwards.
It's backwards.
So the rubber bricks were removed on that, so what's there now?
there's nothing there now. There's wood right now.
It's just wood.
Yeah, there's wood right now. Material, very cool material.
It's not part of this application, but something that staff would recommend to the property owner is the cornice area that's got that 1940s, 50s, 60s materials on it. You could probably clean that cornice up pretty nice and remove some of that and get that back down to the brick and get a paint job on it. Probably dress up that part of the facade pretty well. It's kind of reminding me of some of the buildings that were over on West Washington Street that got demolished recently that had the more 1950s kind of signboards and cornices on them. But that's not part of the application.
Right, understood. I guess my concern would be, if we put stone on just this front area, building as a whole is not going to replicate that, and be balanced on the other side. And the proposal right now, it's only going to be half, basically you got a half a double, and you have the other side that there's no work planned for.
I mean, they're talking about doing half on the whole lower level because they're taking both storefronts. And then the other half of the building would be brick, but that would actually, that would look very good because it would break it up. If you had both stone, it would be kind of plain, depending on how you paint it. With the trim, you could make that look very sharp.
No, I understand that, but I think the overall appearance of the building is very balanced, left to right symmetrical. And we go changing one side to the other, then I think it's going to start throwing the overall appearance of the.
I was worried about that as well, but then they wanted to take both storefronts. They're doing both sides exactly the same. So both storefronts are going to look the same on the bottom. And then the top part, I'll take care of the painting and trim work, tie it all together. But that was one of my first concerns. Is it would, as I'm trying to make these nicer, and what I'm trying to do with the upstairs, that if they did one side like that, it would throw off the other side and throw off the balance. And that's when they expressed they wanted to take other storefront for another concept they have and do both sides of that stone and make it symmetrical. So I don't know if that's reflected on the application.
The
if that's what the
application is,
applicant
we
intended.
understood it was just for one of the storefronts, but you're more than welcome to amend the application to do it for both storefronts, if that's
So that's
would help
exactly,
this body
that's what they're doing.
justify it. Like if you have that issue with the balance, so if they're willing to amend the application to do it on both storefronts.
I think they would have to do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Thank you. If I'm following this conversation, is it being suggested that because the large windows on both sides of this property, 55 and 57, and the brickwork look like they were added and modified, that the body may lean towards a change in the veneer finish of the front? Am I following? Because you got a lot of stuff being talked about here.
Yeah, it appears that whenever the storefront was modified the last time, they used a faux brick type material that was probably pressed rubber that, was colored and in appearance made it look like brick. And I think that was applied to both sides. One side that shows up in our staff photo, obviously it has been removed. The other side,
Right.
is still there. Besides,
And I think I understand why the applicant perhaps thought that a change in the exterior would be okay, because the materials are kind of a mishmash and the windows are oversized for the building. There's a lot going on. I can see why they would want to improve it, and I can see why they thought that it would be okay. And my opinion is, if I'm hearing this correctly, if the building owner owns both sides and can affect this, in a city that has modified through time, and this bottom section really isn't, it's kind of all over the place. Maybe there is a solution if both sides were modified to be integral, but I don't know if it's the stone or if it's something else, but I know that's not what the application says. But if tearing the building into two separate entities, regardless of the choice of materials, would just make it look, bad, for lack of a better word. And maybe there's another solution in here, but I don't know what it is. But I would not be opposed to a change in the first floor exterior, only because these modifications, it looks like there's been more than one has already occurred. But I would be thinking that you would want to balance, because of the door positions being off-centered and weird, that you would have to work both sides together into something. That's just my input.
yeah, so, if application would be amended to carry the stone to both sides.
Basically, the stone is so I appreciate this correctly. The stone would be going with the boat right here.
Yes.
Now we're suggesting if that's done on both sides, then that could be acceptable.
You know, they don't necessarily have to change the windows on the other side yet. But if they change to stone, I think that would be agreeable. to
Yeah, it's
everyone.
got to balance out. I mean,
Yeah, question.
Mm-hmm.
Why,
Agreeable to-
why we change the windows that the previous tenant had there, not a safety window.
Oh, that's-
Somebody threw a rock, push that in.
Oh, not only that, you can press into the glass and it goes out. It's very dangerous.
I don't think anybody has that.
Yeah, but-
Yeah. I
What
don't
we're
think any of
saying
these
is
members have the
You
slightest
don't
problem
have to
with that.
change 57. As long as you're changing 55, you can wait on that or whatever. I'm not gonna make you spend more money right there.
The plan is to right now to do it all at once because
Oh,
they're taking both
yeah.
storefronts. And guys, I hate to bow out. I got family out of town that's about to leave the airport in town. I got to go say goodbye. I've waited as long as possible. Is there any reason I have to stay?
Just so we're clear, as property owner, you're okay with an
I'm
amendment to the
100%
application to do stone all the way across the front and the
Yes.
windows across?
Yes, and not only that, I love what these guys are doing. It's a great concept. It's going to help the area. I was really impressed with their build out, not just because it looks pretty, because it's symmetrical and it was done right.
Okay.
So thank you.
So, as I appreciate this application, the glass is not the issue.
Right.
So this is just a stone and you're amenable to putting the stone on both sides.
Sounds like they're
By the way, I've
amending their
never had
application.
any Meeting early, any important meeting early, any council meeting, I gotta say bye. So,
it's fine.
thank you.
You're even- All right,
So the applicant is amenable to modifying the application. Okay.
on both sides. All right. Any other comments, Chris or Leslie? If, you know, stones applied to both sides of the building, gives it a little bit more balance with that.
I think that if, because the materials are, because the materials on the building have been added later and the size of the windows have been added later, I think it's a legitimate reason to allow for a change. However, balancing the building, I think, is important. It will also draw our eye up to the exterior historic aspect of the building just because you've got like a hug around the building that way, this balance. So you're not diminishing the historic aspect. So I would be in favor of that kind of modification, but I don't know if the applicant has to change their drawing.
They agreed to making the amendment, so they're fine.
I would do some type of detail as you transition from the stone to the signage, you know, cornice line there on that area. Some way to cap stone off as a stopping point as it transitions into the painted brick above. So there needs to be some detail developed for that, and you can certainly bring that back at a later date.
We could do that as consent agenda. if we need
Yeah,
to
that
do
could
it.
be a consent agenda item, but there needs to be some way to transition, not just a hard stop. You know, there needs to be a way to kind of cap that as you move up into the building.
Okay, meaning capping us, how high we going on the,
Yeah, so I mean, you know, on your sides, as you come up with the brick or with the stone, as you get to this horizontal member here, you want to treat that, you know, whether the stone somehow projects forward like a cap, you know, like it's on top of a pier, or some other type of detail to transition from one material to the
okay,
sign.
so
sign.
it blends right up to the top.
Right.
Okay.
And you're not looking to put stone above the windows.
No,
correct?
no, no,
It's
it
just
just- it
below and then on
It
the
just stops
pillars.
above on the line over here, goes across.
And one of the things I'm actually looking to do is contact Mr. Fitzgerald and talk to him about the stuff above that, how we can improve the appearance of that as well.
All right.
Which will make the storefront even look even better.
He said he's gonna take care of it.
Okay.
He hopes he works on it fast.
All right. Any further discussion? We have, I think, consensus.
So are they going with the stone facade?
Yes,
With the stone.
Okay, yeah, because the brick was not original apparently, so.
Yeah, that, everything that's in that storefront is mid to late 20th century. When that building was built, the storefront would have been wood.
So whoever makes a motion, please note that the storefront not being original to the building had been modified in the past. And with the use of the stone, even though kind of non-conforming material, it, I guess, still relates to just modernizing the storefront at that point. So, because at this time, whatever the storefront is not original fabric of the building. All right, we'll entertain a motion.
You may have to fill in the blanks. Mr. Chairman, I have inspected project plans and property in question, and if constructed in accordance with these plans, the project is compatible with the character of the district for the reasons that the materials, including the modification for the new stone veneer front on both sides of the building, architectural detailing, which will bring this building up to date, modern 21st century details, roof, windows, general form and proportion are generally in harmony with architectural design guidelines for the commercial and storage district and the character of the adjoining properties. Therefore, I move that the HDC grant a certificate of appropriateness to the applicant for case number HDC 2021-25 as amended.
That works.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, let the record show, Mr. George seconded. Any further discussion?
Does the motion require any other action before us for the placement of anything for the adjacent side? Are we done? We'll do the amendment.
The adjacent side is included, has been amended to be included with these improvements. We're
Okay.
Continuing the stone over to that
Yep.
side.
And the windows is my understanding from Mike. He said he was going to do it all at one time. So you aren't going to have to come back,
All right.
other than maybe some just for that detailing across the top. We can work together on that.
All
Okay.
right, then, answer
Just want to
your
be
question.
clear.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All right, any nays? None? There's no extensions, motion carries.
And sir, could you give your name into the microphone just for the record since you spoke?
Esteban Gill, owner of Allen's Juice Bar.
Esteban Gill, Gill.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right,
We do
Appreciate
minutes
the
and
time.
we have to describe who spoke, so.
all right, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, sir.
We're all done. And,
Enjoy your day.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks. I'll get your letter together for you tomorrow.
At this time, we have.
Sure, up and down.
When's your anticipated opening date?
When's your
That
anticipated
is a
opening
question for
date?
Doug. I don't know because they're the ones who, I mean, it probably would, but he'd be the one who would tell you. And if he needs more, we can work with you. to get
All right. All right, this time there are no workshops.
I'm looking forward to coming down and having some juice.
Do we have any new business? Any new business needs to be brought before this commission? Hearing none?
Yeah, actually, I got something for you. The planning commission at their last meeting, they took a vote and they voted to put together a resolution thanking Debbie Calhoun for her nearly 4 decades of service. Would you all like to do something similar?
Certainly.
We'll do it up for you.
Thank you. Yes, we'd like to thank Ms. Calhoun for her dedicated service. So
Absolutely.
sorry I missed the party. I got tied up in a meeting and wasn't able to escape. All right, any old business needs to be brought before this commission?
I talked to Steve about an old item that doesn't really concern us, but it's the wrought iron fencing or the railing at City Park along Virginia Avenue. It has not been installed yet, and I'm afraid that someone's going to take a tumble down that hill. They've also removed all the railing from the stairway that goes from Virginia Avenue down into the park, and there's nothing for anyone to hold on to. And he said he'd get with Rodney about it.
Yeah, I'll talk to the city engineer.
Okay, yeah, because there are some events coming up the next couple weekends out there, so safety's a concern. All right, any other old business?
Nope.
Hearing none, any announcements? Congratulations to Debbie, and hopefully she's enjoying her newfound freedom. All right, if no other announcements, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. See everybody in 2 weeks, July 22nd. Thanks.
Thank you.
I hope they're successful. I said, I hope those guys are successful.
Yeah, good. Yeah. What happened to Salsa Mama?